Hey everyone, have you ever tried to learn how to code but got stuck? In my new Python programming class, we're going to break that loop. This course is primarily focused on people who are complete beginners, so don't worry if you don't have any background. This course is different than other courses because we're going to teach you to think like a programmer and solve problems like a robot. So let's get started. Hi everyone, so in the last video we talked a little bit about things that we can do with strings that are going to make our lives a lot easier. And what we did particularly is we used this upper method in order to be able to encrypt our string. So now this string looks like a bunch of gibberish, E, F, Q, E, B, O, B, L, R, O, but we really know that's an encrypted version of our message here. Hi there, our password is password. So using just the simple things that we already learned about, which was if statements and functions as well as for loops, as well as a couple of things that we just learned, which was string methods, which made this uppercase, we were able to translate this string, our message, into a encrypted string. Now, the next step is we're going to want to use a couple of things to make this into an easier to use form and something that we can use elsewhere in our application or whatever we're creating. To do this, what we're going to do is instead of printing out this value, we're actually going to use some of the things we learned before about strings to create one single string that will have all of these characters in there. So to do this, we're going to say final encrypted string. This is going to be a variable. We're going to set this equal to an empty string. And then we're going to take away the print and we're going to say encrypted letter. And we're going to set this, the result of this function, which will be the translated letter, into this encrypted letter variable. And then we're going to say final encrypted string is equal to final encrypted string plus encrypted letter. Okay, so what does this say? This says that we're going to go through every letter in this message. So we're going to go to remind ourselves what that message looks like. It's pretty much up here. Message.upper is this guy. So we're going to go, let's start with H. We're going to go through H. We're going to encrypt the letter and save it in this value encrypted letter. And then we're going to take our final encrypted string, which at first is just an empty string. That's what this represents, an empty string, and a string with nothing in it. And then we're going to take that and set it equal to that encrypted string, which is, again, nothing at first, plus whatever that encrypted letter is. And then we're going to keep doing that for every value in the character. So what this is going to, in effect, do, it's going to keep track of each letter and keep adding it on to the end of the string, kind of like we did here, but for every single letter, it's going to keep adding it. So for H, this was nothing. Final encrypted string was nothing, and then we added H. And then for the next letter, final encrypted string was H, because we added H last time, and we add in the next letter, which was the I value, the encrypted value for I. And then we're just going to keep doing that for every single letter in that message. And then once we're done with that for all of this, we're going to print out our final encrypted string. And let's take a look at what this looks like. This is exactly what we were going for. In general, now there's a couple of things we're going to change about this, but in general, now we have this encrypted string. These are all the letters of this message encrypted. Now, there's a couple of things I want to take note of. First off is that our original function actually sets the encrypted letter equal to an empty string if it's not found in this list, right? So it's going to go through all the letters, but if it's not a capital letter, it's just going to set it equal to an empty string, these two quotes. Instead of doing that, let's make it a space because it's up. What it did was it skipped over all the spaces whenever we did this. So we're going to make this into a space to make our function work a little bit better for us. And then we're going to print this out. And you can see, believe it or not, this is our original string, but now encrypted. Hi there, our password is password. That's what this says in our new language. But to anyone else looking at it, it's gibberish, right? They wouldn't know what this means. So now we've been able to encrypt our original message using this for loop and by concatenating to each string. Now, this entire operation is actually very common in Python. And this is known as incrementing. And you could do this with numbers too. For instance, if I set this variable counter equal to 0 and I say for I in range 10. Now, if you remember, this is going to go through all the numbers between 0 and 9. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's what range will do. And then for each of those numbers, I'm going to say counter is equal to counter plus 1. Now, this is again known as incrementing that value. So for every value in between 0 and 9, it's just going to keep adding 1. The first time it's going to be 0 plus 1, then it's going to be 1 plus 1, then 2 plus 1, and it's going to increment up. So when I look at the final value of counter, it's going to be 10 because it went through 10 numbers and it kept adding 1, right? If I added I instead of 1, it would actually keep adding each number. So what I get is 45. 45 is 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9. So that's what we've done, right? We've incremented that value up by each of the results of this function. And this is pretty powerful because for each of the values in the list, we're adding on to what we already know. So that's the idea of incrementing. And we do this in a lot of ways, and very frequently in Python we'll increment in this way. And we did the same thing here with this string, right? We took this original string, which was originally empty, kind of like a 0 would be for numbers, and we kept adding to it. So we're doing a similar thing here when we're incrementing in general. This is a very powerful thing that you can do in Python. So powerful, in fact, that there is actually a shorthand for this. And you'll see this quite a bit. The shorthand is to remove counter equals counter plus I, and you can just do counter plus or equal to I. So this is the same as counter equals counter plus I, and it's just shorthand for it because it's such a common operation. Now, if I run this, we're going to get the same result. And you don't have to use this. If it's easier for you to understand counter equals counter plus I, then that's the way that you should do it. That's all it's doing is translating this plus equal to I to this value, right? So every time it goes through, it's just going to keep adding to this single value. And it does a similar thing here for the string. So every time it goes through, it's just adding another string onto the end here. It's tacking on a different letter. So this idea of incrementing is very powerful in programming languages in general because it allows us to keep track of our results over a longer period of time. So in this case, we keep track of each encrypted letter and add it to some final letter. And in this case, we keep track of each of the numbers we went through and add it to some final result. So that's the idea behind incrementing, and that's what we're going to use. And we've used it here to be able to get our final string, which is going to be our encrypted string that has all of the encrypted letters that we had talked about up until now. Okay, so now the next video, we're going to talk about some of the easier ways that you can handle a lot of what we've already just done in order to make this easier to go in the opposite direction, which would be decryption, and just some of the general concepts behind some of why we might want to.